Level 1. The Candidate. You show up to Scout Sniper School hauling 60 pounds of gear through Carolina humidity so thick it feels like God wrapped the entire state in a hot, wet towel and forgot about it. Your lungs are filing a formal complaint before you even clear the parking lot. The instructors don't greet you. They don't welcome you. They're already sorting the herd into 3 categories you can't see, but they absolutely can. Potential, marginal, waste of oxygen. Nobody tells you which bin you landed in. Nobody tells you anything except where to stand, when to move, and when to shut the hell up. On day 1, they drop the attrition rate on you like it's the weather forecast. 70%. They say it the same way someone would say it's partly cloudy, just another environmental fact. 7 out of every 10 of you will be gone before graduation. Some will quit, some will get cut, and some will break in ways that don't show up on the surface until it's way too late. And here's the part that messes with your head. Your first week isn't about shooting. It's not about ballistics or rifles or anything you fantasized about. It's stalking, moving across open terrain without being detected. You're belly down in fields where instructors with high-powered binos are actively hunting for any twitch, any shimmer, any blade of grass that moves wrong. If they spot you, you don't get a second chance. You get a restart. Back to the beginning, do it again. You build ghillie suits out of burlap and whatever vegetation grows locally, turning yourself into something that doesn't look human anymore, something that blends with the dirt and the grass and the shadows between trees. You learn to move inches per hour, not feet, inches. You learn that patience isn't a virtue out here, it's a weapon, and it's more valuable than any rifle in the armory. You learn the first rule of this entire profession. A sniper's greatest skill isn't pulling a trigger, it's becoming invisible. The candidates around you start dropping like bad stocks in a bear market. One taps out after a night exercise that left him hypothermic and questioning every life decision that led him to this swamp. 2 get cut for safety violations on the range, and 1 just ghosts. Doesn't show up for formation one morning, his bunk stripped clean, his gear returned, his resignation submitted sometime in the darkness between lights out and reveille. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. You stay, not because you're the best candidate in the class, you're not. You stay because your brain physically cannot process the concept of leaving. Every crawl through mud that gets into places on your body that should be constitutionally protected. Every hour of absolute stillness while fire ants and mosquitoes use your face as a runway. Every failure that sends you back to the start line. You file all of it somewhere deep where it can't touch your will. This is what you signed up for. This is who you're becoming. The shooting portion comes later, and it humbles you immediately. You know rifles. You grew up hunting. You were putting rounds on steel at distances that would impress every dude at your local civilian range. But precision shooting at 1,000 yards is a completely different sport. Wind doesn't just push the bullet sideways, it curves it in patterns that shift second by second as the round passes through pockets of air with different temperatures and densities. Gravity drops the round in arcs that require actual math, not your gut feeling. The fundamentals you thought you had on lock are foundations you're still pouring concrete on. The final exercise is where candidates who survived everything else finally snap. 4 days in the field, minimal supplies, you're completing stalks under live evaluation, taking scored shots under pressure, and operating on sleep measured in minutes, not hours. Your body stops knowing where the mud ends and your skin begins. Your brain simplifies down to one function, the next task, nothing beyond it. The instructors aren't just watching for physical collapse, they're watching for mental fractures. Some candidates perform flawlessly, right up until something inside just gives out. Some internal circuit breaker tripping under the accumulated weight of weeks of stress. Those guys are gone immediately. Not punished, just identified as unsuited. Because this profession requires a very specific type of psychology, one that can't be taught, only revealed. You survive because you discover something about yourself that turns out to be extremely useful. Your mind gets quieter under pressure, not louder. The chaos doesn't compound, it simplifies. The harder things get, the clearer you think. It's not bravery, it's not toughness, it's just how your operating system was built. You graduate in the bottom third of your class. Not spectacular, not shameful, competent. You get your designation, your orders, and you ship out to a team that needs warm bodies more than it needs excellence. Level 2. The Spotter. Your team leader is a staff sergeant named Reyes, 4 combat deployments, eyes that never quite lock on to the present tense. He sent more people to the afterlife than you've met in yours. And he carries that weight in ways you don't notice until you've known him for months. The slight pause before he walks into any room. The way he always sits facing the door at restaurants. The way he positions himself to have eyes on every exit. The nightmares he never mentions, but everyone hears, bleeding through thin barracks walls at 2 a.m. You're the junior man, which means you spot. The shooter pulls the trigger, but the spotter does literally everything else. Range estimation, wind calls, target identification, documentation. You're the shooter's external hard drive, processing all the environmental data so he can focus entirely on trigger control, breathing, and the precise muscle memory that puts rounds exactly where physics and training say they should go. Your first deployment is to a country you're not allowed to name, doing things that don't officially exist on any government record. The rules of engagement are complicated, and they change weekly, sometimes daily. The enemy doesn't wear a uniform. He looks like everybody else on the street until the exact moment he doesn't. You learn to read thread the way a stock trader reads candlestick charts, the way someone walks, the way they position their hands, the subtle patterns of normal human behavior that break just slightly right before violence enters the chat. Your first confirmed kill as a spotter is a man holding an RPG on a rooftop. Reyes takes the shot from 800 meters while you call the wind, confirm the target, and watch through your scope as the round arrives before the sound does. 1 second, the man is shouldering his weapon, lining up on a convoy route packed with Marines. The next second, he's falling. The biological systems that kept him alive just switching off, like someone pulled a plug. The RPG clatters to the rooftop unfired. You expected to feel something massive in this moment. Triumph, horror, guilt, something. What you actually feel is professional satisfaction. The exact same emotion you'd feel after any job executed correctly. The shot was clean. The target was valid. The convoy was safe. You file the man's face somewhere in your brain where it won't surface uninvited, and you move to the next task. Reyes watches you afterward. He's looking for cracks. He's seen brand new spotters completely shatter at this exact moment. The training suddenly becoming real. The abstract suddenly turning concrete. He doesn't see what he's looking for in your eyes, and he's not sure yet if that's a good thing or a concerning one. You don't ask which. Over the next several months, you learn things that no school on Earth could teach you. How to read local atmospherics, the way morning air behaves completely differently than afternoon air in specific terrain. How to improvise a shooting position when the textbook hide site doesn't exist in the real world. How to walk away from a shot that isn't there and swallow the frustration, because patience matters infinitely more than body count. You learn the deployment cycle, the intense operational tempo where every day could be your last, followed by the bizarre purgatory of downtime in secure zones where absolutely nothing happens except waiting. The way bonds form between men through shared experiences that become literally impossible to describe to anyone who wasn't there. You play cards, you lift weights, you stare at walls. The adrenaline withdrawal is almost physical. Your body craves the mission the way an addict craves the hit. And then the letters from home arrive, already outdated by the time they reach your hands. Your girl describing a world that kept moving without you. Your mom asking questions about your job that you can't answer without committing a federal crime. You realize the civilian world is running on a completely different operating system than yours, and the two are becoming less and less compatible with every deployment. You learn Reyes, his patterns, his tells, his preferences, when he wants your input and when he wants you to shut up and let him think. The way he breathes right before he decides to take the shot. That short, controlled inhale, and the longer, slower exhale when he decides to wait. You learn that the wait is where the real discipline lives. Any idiot can pull a trigger, knowing when not to pull it. That's the skill that separates the professionals from the body bags. You become an extension of him. That's not a metaphor. That's literally the job description. Your identity dissolves into the team, and for now, that feels like exactly where it belongs. Level 3. The Shooter. Reyes rotates home after his 5th deployment. He takes a training command position back stateside that everyone pretends is a promotion, but everyone knows is really about the drinking that's gotten too visible to ignore and the marriage that was already dead 3 deployments ago. The signs were there if you knew where to look. The way he started taking longer to settle behind the scope, the way his hands, once surgical, developed a micro tremor that only showed up in cold weather. The way he stopped talking about home entirely, which was somehow louder than anything he could have said. You attend his farewell with the complicated cocktail of emotions that military transitions always require. Gratitude for everything he taught you, relief that he's getting out before the job finishes what it started, and this weird, low-grade grief for a version of Reyes that might have existed if he'd never looked through a scope in combat. You wonder if that version of him had a marriage that worked, a sleep schedule that didn't require medication, eyes that could focus on the present instead of constantly scanning for threats that haven't materialized yet. You shake his hand. He grips it too tight and holds it too long. He doesn't say anything profound. He just nods, the kind of nod that says everything words can't carry. His replacement is younger than you, a brand new staff sergeant from a different unit, technically senior in rank, practically dependent on your experience for everything that matters. The power dynamic flips without a single person acknowledging it out loud. You're the shooter now, not because of some ceremony or promotion board, because that's what the team needs. And rank accommodates necessity in small units operating far from anyone with enough stars on their collar to care. Your first shot as the primary trigger puller is anticlimactic, a confirmed hostile at 600 meters, wind steady, conditions perfect. The mechanics execute exactly as trained. Breathe, pause, squeeze, watch the round arrive, confirm the result, displace, done. It's the hard shots that show you who you've actually become. There's a compound sitting in a valley where 3 American aid workers are being held hostage. The intelligence is solid, confirmed by multiple sources, time-stamped within hours. These people were grabbed 2 weeks ago by a cell that's already uploaded one execution video to the internet as a recruitment trailer. The clock isn't ticking, it's sprinting. You set up at 1,400 meters. That's farther than you've ever shot in actual combat conditions. Your hands are steady, but your pulse knows the math. At this distance, a single miscalculation, even a degree off on the wind call, and the round misses by a body length. Or worse, it hits the wrong body. The wind in this valley is a nightmare. Thermals bouncing off the canyon walls create shifting currents that change direction every few minutes, like the atmosphere itself can't make up its mind. Your spotter is calling numbers that keep updating, numbers that represent his best professional guess at physics that flat out refuses to cooperate today. You wait for hours, not minutes, hours, watching through glass that makes the compound crystal clear despite the distance. You memorize the guard rotation patterns, you time their cigarette breaks, you count their weapons. You catch brief glimpses of the hostages through a window, faces you recognize from the briefing photos. Alive for now, probably not for much longer based on the chatter the signals guys are intercepting. The shot comes at sunset, when the target stops at a predictable position for just long enough. You apply corrections that feel half calculated and half instinctual, the math and the art fusing in a way that you couldn't diagram on a whiteboard even if your life depended on it. The trigger breaks clean. The round crosses the distance in less than 2 seconds. The guard drops and the assault element detonates into action. 20 minutes of controlled chaos later, the hostages are on helicopters and you're breaking down your position and the sun is completely gone and the valley is dark and quiet like nothing ever happened here. 3 confirmed saves. 3 human beings who will see their families again because of one trigger squeeze you made from almost a mile away. This one feels different than the others. Not better, not worse, just different. The weight you carry redistributes slightly. Level 4. The Instructor. You return to the same school that built you, except now you're standing on the other side. You're the one evaluating the fresh meat, watching candidates who remind you of yourself 8 years and a lifetime ago. The machine keeps running. The institution outlives every individual who passes through it. Teaching cracks open gaps in your own knowledge you didn't even know existed. You thought you understood why certain techniques worked, but having to explain them to someone who's never done it forces a deeper level of analysis. The why behind the rules, the principles underneath the procedures. Ironically, you become a better shooter by learning how to build shooters from scratch. The candidates struggle with the same fundamentals you struggled with: trigger control, breath management, the mental discipline required to lie still for hours and then execute a perfect shot in a 2-second window. You watch them break against the difficulty, and you learn to predict which ones will make it. It's not the guys with the biggest muscles. It's not the natural marksmen who hit everything on day one. It's the ones who treat failure as data rather than a death sentence. The ones who adjust and adapt instead of repeating the same mistakes and expecting the universe to change its mind. You build a reputation, harsh assessments, fair treatment. Your candidates learn fast that your criticism is surgical, targeted at specific deficiencies, not general discouragement. They learn that your standards don't negotiate, and they learn that graduates from your training cycles perform measurably better in their first deployments, which is the only stat that actually matters in this business. But here's the uncomfortable truth, that teaching puts distance between you and the work itself. You're manufacturing shooters now, not being one. The skills you maintain on training ranges feel fundamentally different from skills tested in actual operations where people are actively trying to kill you back. The edge dulls, not in technique, in something harder to measure. The readiness for real violence becomes theoretical instead of practical. You miss it. That's the part you don't say out loud. You miss the raw, stripped-down clarity of operational deployment, the focus that combat creates by burning away every irrelevant thought until you're nothing but the mission. Training is valuable. Training saves lives downstream, but training is also repetitive, administrative, and buried in paperwork that actual combat somehow never requires. So when the opportunity comes for one more deployment, you don't hesitate, you take it. Level 5. The Team Leader. The unit looks different now. Younger faces with cultural references you don't recognize. Technology that didn't exist when you started this journey. They call you old man. They mean it with love, which somehow makes it worse. You're not old, not technically, but your knees have started predicting weather with better accuracy than the meteorologist. Your back has a photographic memory of every uncomfortable position you've held for hours across a decade of deployments. Recovery time after hard operations has stretched from days to weeks. But you lead because experience doesn't depreciate, it compounds. You've watched good shooters make catastrophic decisions under pressure, and mediocre shooters make brilliant calls through pure discipline. You know which instincts to trust and which ones to override. Your team deploys to a conflict that's technically not a war, doing operations that technically don't happen, producing results that technically will never be acknowledged by anyone with a press badge or a congressional seat. The geopolitical paperwork says you were never here. The bullet casings say otherwise. The targets are higher value now. These aren't foot soldiers or low-level triggermen. These are the architects, the planners, the money. The intelligence is better. The shots are harder. But the support infrastructure behind you is more substantial than anything you had as a junior guy. Drones feeding you real-time imagery, signals intelligence piping threat data straight to your earpiece. It's a far cry from the days when you and Reyes were operating on gut instinct and a prayer. You take a shot at 1,700 meters that makes your reputation in the entire sniper community. Difficult downhill angle, variable wind shifting across 3 different channels between you and the target. Time pressure that completely eliminated the usual preparation ritual. No range card, no pre-calculated dope. Just you, your spotter's best guess, and whatever God was willing to contribute. The target was moving between armored vehicles in a pattern that created a shooting window measured in single-digit seconds. You had one chance. You made the shot because the alternative was losing the target entirely. And you made it well because the alternative was absolutely unacceptable. Your team talks about that shot afterward. It becomes unit legend, growing slightly more impressive with every retelling. You don't correct the exaggerations because morale has tangible value in small teams, but privately, you know exactly how much luck was involved. The wind cooperated at the critical moment. The target paused a half-second longer than expected. Physics decided to play on your team when it very easily could have played for the other side. But the shot that actually matters, the one that rewires your entire nervous system permanently, is one that nobody talks about, ever. A mistake. A target positively identified and engaged who turned out to be wrong. The intelligence was bad. Somebody in a room thousands of miles away with clean hands and a cup of coffee looked at the wrong satellite image or misread a signal intercept. But your shot was perfect, mechanically flawless, technically immaculate. The outcome was a dead civilian in a place he shouldn't have been, doing things that looked threatening from 1,200 meters away, but weren't. Maybe he was carrying a shovel that looked like a weapon through the scope. Maybe he was walking with a purpose that matched the movement pattern of someone who meant harm. You'll never know what he was actually doing because you killed him before the truth had a chance to arrive. Collateral damage. That's the sanitized language they use in the after-action reports. Regrettable, but unavoidable. The cost of doing business in asymmetric warfare. Murder. That's the word your conscience uses at 3 a.m. when the rest of the world is sleeping and there's nobody around to offer you the comfortable euphemisms. You don't sleep well for months after. The faces accumulate anyway, hostile and civilian alike. They all pile up. But that face is different. That face asks questions that your rules of engagement can't answer. The review board cleared you. The chain of command cleared you. But the face doesn't clear you. And the face keeps showing up, uninvited, every single night. You learn to carry that weight because the alternative is not carrying any weight at all. And the soldiers who feel nothing, who can drop bodies and sleep like babies, those guys scare you way more than the ones who feel everything. At least the pain proves the conscience still has a pulse. Level 6. The Master. The title isn't official. You won't find it on any promotion list or personnel file. It's given by your peers, by the community. It means you've survived long enough to become statistically rare, a shooter who hasn't broken mentally, burned out physically, or simply gotten unlucky in the brutal mathematics of incoming fire. It means younger operators seek you out to ask questions they'd never ask anyone else because they know you've seen things their instructors only read about in after-action reports. You rotate between deployment and development now, testing new systems that promise to make future snipers more lethal and more efficient. Optics that calculate ballistic solutions automatically based on range, wind, temperature, altitude, and the Coriolis effect. Rifles with onboard sensors that adjust for environmental conditions in real time. Ammunition engineered to perform consistently across temperature extremes that would have made your old rounds keyhole. Silicon Valley engineers fly out to demonstrate prototypes and watch your face for approval like you're a Yelp reviewer who can make or break their defense contract. The technology is genuinely impressive. Some of it borders on science fiction. But you understand something the engineers back in their air-conditioned labs fundamentally don't. The human variables that create failure are also the human variables that create success. The judgment call to hold fire when the computer says shoot. The gut feeling that says this hide site is compromised. Move now, 3 minutes before the enemy mortar lands exactly where you were sitting. The intuition that only comes from thousands of hours behind glass, watching real human behavior through a reticle. No algorithm replicates that. Not yet, maybe not ever. And then there's the moral dimension that nobody in the engineering department wants to talk about. The weight that separates a soldier from a weapons platform. Make the equipment too automatic. Strip out too much of the human element, and you lose something essential, something that keeps the killing bounded by conscience rather than just bounded by battery life and bandwidth. Your last deployment is simultaneously the easiest and the hardest of your career. Easy because the operations are routine, if anything in this profession can honestly be called routine. Hard because you know it's the last one, and knowing changes everything. You watch your team with the awareness of an ending. You appreciate shots that would have been unremarkable a decade ago. You pay attention to details you would have ignored as a younger man, mentally cataloging experiences you know you'll never have again. Your final shot is unremarkable. A confirmed hostile at medium distance, standard conditions, professional execution, textbook. You don't actually know it's your last shot until you're on the transport heading home. And then you know with absolute certainty that you'll never do this again. 20 plus years, hundreds of operations, kills you stopped counting a long time ago because counting started to feel wrong. You've shaped an entire generation of shooters who are now shaping the generation after them. Techniques you developed through trial and blood are being taught in schoolhouses to soldiers who will never know your name. What you carry home with you doesn't clear customs. It lives in your head forever. The faces, the sounds, the smell of cordite and copper that triggers memories without any warning, ambushing you in the cereal aisle of a suburban grocery store on a random Tuesday afternoon. The hypervigilance that kept you alive in combat, but now has you scanning every rooftop and every window at your kid's soccer game. The relationships that didn't survive the deployments. The connections that couldn't handle the person this profession required you to become. But there's the other side of the ledger too. The people who are alive right now because you you were exceptionally good at something terrible. The hostages pulled out of compounds. The convoys that made it through. The attacks that never happened because you eliminated the threat before it could execute a plan that would have killed dozens, maybe hundreds. The math doesn't balance. It's not supposed to. You did what your country asked you to do, and you did it better than almost anyone. The rifle goes in a case. The case goes in a closet. The closet doesn't get opened very often. The skills remain underneath your civilian surface, slowly dulling from disuse, available if ever needed again, but hopefully never needed again. The identity persists because you can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unfeel the recoil. Some nights you dream about shots you didn't take, the moments of hesitation, the targets that moved before you could resolve the decision. You wonder about the lives that continued because you waited one breath too long, and whether those lives did good or harm in the years that followed. You'll never know. That's the nature of the work. One shot at a time, one breath at a time. The discipline holds. Somewhere right now, some kid who grew up hunting with his dad in the Carolina woods is walking into a recruiting office, chest puffed out, head full of movie scenes and video game highlight reels, thinking he knows what this life is about. He has no idea what he's really signing up for. He doesn't know about the stillness. He doesn't know about the faces. He doesn't know that this profession will hollow him out and fill him back up with ghosts. But he'll learn. They always do. The cycle begins again. That's a wrap for today. I've got more deep dives like this coming your way, so make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next drop.